Bobby, we're live.
Hey, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of Anchor Watch. I'm your humble host, Bobby Jones, with the executive producer extraordinaire, Sam. And there's a lot, there's a lot to discuss. It seems like over the last week, everything has gone to hell in a handbasket. And I just wonder how you guys out in the world, out in the country, everybody watching this, how you feel, because I know how I feel about certain things, and I never thought I'd live long enough to say this. I hate to be right about things, but Sam, I think I'm right about a lot of this, and it's scary, to be honest with you. What are your thoughts?
Well, so look, 4.5 months ago, we went to war with Iran, and you said it. We were talking in the green room. First of all, hi, everyone. It's one of my favorite hours to get super fired up on every week. I'm always glad to be here with Bobby. And before I get into what I'm going to say, I want to say, everyone out there, this audience is like the best, Bobby. This is the best, one of the best audiences we have. And so send your comments, send your chat. Bobby and I both we're constantly looking off screen because we're reading what you have to say. So send questions because we love them. And that you guys really pose some of the best questions we've had. So that's thank you. Welcome to my TED Talk. But look, it was 18-ish weeks ago. We went to war. You sat down with Susan Demas, our executive editor, for like 2.5 hours afterwards, right? And
Yep.
I want to put this into perspective. That Friday, the Friday before the war, we all knew it was happening. There were rumblings that something was going down. As many of you know, I have family in Iran, and I said to my wife, we need to call them because we don't know what's going to happen. We got through. We spoke to them that Friday, and then not again for another 8 or 10 weeks. They blocked off the internet. I mean, look, this has been a tour of ups and downs, and it's been comical because Trump keeps saying this.
Mr. President, just on Iran, you have said now to Congress that we are back at war. How long do you expect this to take, and what's the legal
Take what? Take what?
The war.
Well, I think it's going very fast. We've demolished their military. We're hitting them very hard.
So he said, look, we're going to have peace in the Middle East for the first time in 3,000 years. So, Bobby, how's that going?
Well, if you would have told us at the beginning of this whole thing, if you would have said, hey, United States is going to preemptively attack Iran again in the last, 2 years or whatever, my next question would be why and who, as in who will you negotiate the new peace with? Who will be empowered to say these things are going to happen? And most importantly, who's doing the negotiations? What have we seen? We have not seen any professionals anywhere near the table. Like I said, J.D. Vance, an absolute neophyte in international relations, period. Full stop. Witkoff, who has zero experience, but everybody likes him. And Jared Kushner, who is in it for the bag, the money. And now here we are, how many weeks later, how many months later, and we are in the definition of a forever war. The exact thing that he said all of his predecessors were stupid for getting into. And here's the thing that really should just stick in everybody's craw. We have not begun to suffer yet from this. We're inconvenienced now. But has anybody heard of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve? That thing, the SPR? For those who don't know, and I just want to bring this up so I can tell you how it relates to you. After the Arab oil crisis in the 70s, it was Gerald R. Ford who created the SPR. It was designed to, if there was any major catastrophe around the world, that the United States would have a reserve amount of oil-based products to keep our economy and our lives humming. Its capacity is around, I want to say, a little over 700 million barrels of oil. Okay. And that's what it was at its peak. I want to say in 2011. We've used it 4 times. The president of the United States has to be the one to authorize it. 4 times has it been used in the past. It was used in 91 during Desert Storm because of the disruption there. It was used during Katrina. And then it was used also under Biden during COVID and now under Trump. We are currently less than half capacity. Why is this a problem, ladies and gentlemen? Because if we're at less than half capacity, around 330 million barrels, then we will be out if nothing changes within the next 3 weeks based on rate of consumption. And the reason the things that are going on in the Middle East matter are simply because it takes approximately 6 to 8 weeks for tankers to leave that area of the world and get to the Western Hemisphere, North America. All right. Specifically, I want to also bring up the fact that hurricane season is here, and the SPR is based in Louisiana and Texas in the Gulf of Mexico region. Okay. Susceptible to natural disasters, but that's where our refineries are. So when you combine the amount of time that it takes for transit, the amount of vessels that have been shut down from going in there and backfilling, because we've never backfilled, and we've been using this to offset gas prices. And now Trump has gone for a new authorization of the War Powers Resolution. Buckle up. We're now in a long ass conflict. Full stop. Everything is showing that, and this is why people should be concerned. That's my TED Talk.
So, look, I mean, we all know the ceasefire is gone. It's been 3 straight nights of U.S. strikes, something like 170 targets. Iran retaliated against Jordan, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. They struck, I believe, 2 UAE tankers in Omani waters. 1 Indian crew member was killed. The United States has reinstated the blockade as of today at something like 2 p.m. right? Or 4 p.m. I don't know. Trump has even floated that he's going to place a 20% toll on cargo for U.S. protection, right? A protection racket.
Right.
So, as like
illegal, by the way. That's illegal, by the way.
It's illegal.
The same thing that Iran said they were going to do. Yep. That Oman and allies said they were going to do, and the United States said hell no. So now mafia rules, organized crime rules are now being applied to the most strategic waterway in the world. And here's the other thing that I'm just like, how would you even collect who determines who gets to go through? And most importantly, what insurance company is going to take the word of the United States saying you can go through and you can't protect the bases that you've had there for 40 plus years? Why would they believe you could protect merchant vessels? Why should they pay you the 20% of merchant in taxes? None of this makes any logical sense. He's just throwing stuff at the wall, desperate for a breakthrough because he is strategically screwed up.
So, and on that note, oil spiked, right? Something like 9.6% in a single day. It was the biggest single day jump in 6 years. Russia is making money from a bump in oil prices, and yet they are still losing the Ukrainian war. Let me ask this though, as you know, like somebody who's been in the region, who served in the region, who knows those waters, knows those bases, as a student of strategy, and a student of logistics, obviously. This is a quagmire unless I might be getting this wrong. Something has to change on either side, right? Yes. Either Iran is deteriorated over time to the point where they can no longer wage war, but I don't see that happening because we're an invading force, and typically you never give up your homeland. Like you fight until you're all dead. Right. That's how that works. Or the United States commits, escalates. Where are we? Is that a somewhat accurate reading on this?
Not only do I think it's accurate, I think we are ramping up to do the latter. and I hate to say this, but here are 3 reasons, 3 observations from me that tell me we're ramping up to do something if there's no change. Number 1, when's the last time you seen J.D. Vance speak publicly on what's going on with Iran? He's supposed to be the lead negotiator for the United States. You seen him lately? You have not. There's a reason. There's no negotiations happening. There's nothing to convey. And the last time we saw him, literally, the Iran delegation ignored him. That's number 1. Number 2, I've said this before, the position of forces, okay? The United States has moved the elements of the Fifth Fleet that's afloat closer to the mouth of the Strait of Hormuz, further up in the Gulf of Oman. Some people say, yeah, they're trying to bait Iran into attacking a ship, and that'll give us reason to go in there, et cetera, et cetera. No, it's not even really that. It is a rapid response position. If they need to try to go in there, if that decision is made, they are better positioned to do it, right? So that's the second thing. And thirdly, and this is something where, you know, I want to be wrong, but the suggestions, the wild suggestions that are coming from those on the right who are like, you know, you got to take Harg Island. President Trump in the last 72 hours has gone on record on TV saying, well, you know, we'll look at that. Well, he's not saying, no, we're not going to this, that, and the other. And it's coming directly from him because you haven't seen Hegseth either, which is also interesting, which tells me they're knee deep in planning. Now they hit Qasem Island. They're talking about Karg, but again, the problem remains a geographical one along with technological one. You've got to get up in there to drop off forces. It's hard. Maxine is asking, how could the U.S. escalate? What does that mean? Boots on ground? That's exactly what it means in any limited capacity. Now, there's the curse of what happened in Venezuela. And I say curses because the Venezuela extraction of Maduro was headlined by special forces. And so Trump now believes that special forces can do anything. This is not an insertion that we're talking about. This is an invasion that we're talking about. Right. Completely different, because Iran is how many times bigger than Venezuela? Heck, it's bigger than any other country in that region. And the shoreline itself runs the entire basic Persian Gulf. Okay. This is a problem where you need not hundreds, you would need thousands eventually to invade and maintain. Now, a lot of people are like, well, you just need Karg Island, blah, blah. Okay, fine. Let's say it's just Karg Island, which is in what we call the NAG, the North Arabian Gulf section. You got to get there, man. And then even if you are successfully able to infiltrate, you've got to be able to hold it. Because if you think the IRG, specifically the IRGCN, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, their assets, they literally will sacrifice themselves to remove intruders off that land. I know because I dealt with them. So you've got to understand the area, geography-wise, geographically, and you have to understand who you're dealing with. You've been bombing them for 3-4 months, and they're still there. Do you really think when you try to invade their land, they'll just roll over? But at the same time, you may not have a choice, because you got a clock that's ticking called the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which I just mentioned. That is your clock. That is your stopwatch. That is your countdown. And unless something majorly happens quickly, when it gets down to those low millions, the economy will go into a worldwide recession. Not just us, the entire planet, unless something gives. And now you're asking yourself, will President Trump fall on his own sword for the rest of the world? There's your fundamental strategic question, ladies and gentlemen. And I think we all know what the answer is.
No, well, look, I think that, you know, what you're talking about is sacrifice, right? And World War II, the United States came together. We had victory gardens, right? Women joined the workforce in droves, while the men went and fought the battles. And there's nobody has an appetite for sacrifice for something like this, for this particular war. And so I want to actually talk, I've been thinking about this, the Karg Island situation. You see, I don't know, people sounding off on Twitter or God forbid, or wherever that, Karg Island would be a disaster. But can you put it into historical context? Like, this is first of all, it's an island. We've fought battles on islands before, right? How did that go?
The bloodiest conflicts of World War II happened during the island hopping campaign in the Pacific. Now, I have stood on the very spot where that famous flag raising at Iwo Jima on Mount Suribachi was. I can send you pictures. I was there. It was a straight up mountain. And here's the thing. Karg Island's heights are taller than that. And it took the most battle-hardened Marines in U.S. history weeks to secure that. Okay? Karg Island's much bigger than Iwo Jima. It is completely covered in this thing called air defense radars. Also, it's well insulated and protected. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is something that I don't care what type of weapon you have. I don't care how good your intel is. To scale and do that, if you Google it, if you Google Earth it, just Google Earth it. You're asking something very, very difficult, which is why Iran put their oil reserves and their processing there in the first place. The hardest thing the United States military will have to deal with Iran is the geography of Iran. Full stop. Forget weaponry. It's the geography. It's the arid temperatures. It's the size of it. It's the scope of it. It's going to play the ultimate away game against a team that is all about defense at all costs, to include their own life. Right? That's the best way I can describe it for Americans. And no matter how competent and capable your forces are, how technologically advanced you believe those forces are, there's always going to be things that you don't know until you get there that you will have to flex for. And I don't believe the Trump administration, based on their current actions, think in those terms. The known unknowns are not being mentioned, because if they were, they would have never did this in the first place. As much as I couldn't stand some of what Donald Rumsfeld said back when he was Secretary of Defense, when I was a young junior officer, he was right. There are known knowns and known unknowns, and you have to be ready to deal with the known unknowns and then the unknown unknowns.
Look, I think if you guys are just tuning in, this is Anchor Watch with Bobby Jones, and I'm his humble sidekick tonight, Sam Osterhout. We're talking about the war that actually is becoming a real war again, not just in action, but in name. Patrick says, and this is actually a pretty interesting question, and I have kind of a follow-up, but Patrick says, first of all, Patrick earlier said, we should just bomb the mountains flat, Bobby. Like, that's right.
Yeah, because that's worked well in the past.
Yeah, Patrick's always got the good comments, but he says, Bobby, what? Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, Martin mentioned something very true. He's like, Iran is full of mountains all over, and we will be just like the Germans invading Russia. We will be unable to leave. He is absolutely correct.
Yes.
And we have the receipts. We have the lessons. But again, there is an intellectual, cultural, and, to be completely honest, military arrogance that we keep displaying here that is completely and wholly unjustified. And we continue to pay a price. We look down. When I say we, the administration looks down on that culture, looks down on that country, looks down, to be completely blunt and real, on this region of the world, and the fact that there are people of color who are not doing what they want. That also plays into this, because Hegseth is all about this white national Christianic crusade mentality, and is getting our asses handed to us strategically. Has nothing to do with our service members, has nothing to do with federal workers that are trying to do their best. It has everything to do with the strategic bias that is being shown and displayed. And we're getting our asses handed to us. We're going to be paying $6, $7, $8 for gas. We're not going to be able to travel to certain areas. They're going to activate terrorist cells all over the West. There are going to be repercussions for this that they are not talking about to the American public. We've seen this.
Look, I think, you mentioned the unknown knowns, the known unknowns, and all of that. The problem is this administration they think they know everything, right? And
Yes.
the proof of that statement is that they invaded fucking Iran, right? They went to war with Iran and thinking to themselves, even saying out loud in some cases, we're the only administration that was willing to do this. As if that was like a good thing. Like they didn't stop to think, wait, why didn't anyone else do this? So, and I want to get to this question from Patrick.
Mhm.
What about the point? What about the point where Iran decides to destroy Persian Gulf states' oil infrastructure? When do they do that? If we invade, I think it all goes up. And I want to flag that because it's a great point. Iran. The point is that Iran still holds cards that they haven't played.
Yes,
which is terrible.
Absolutely.
Get into that first. We'll go into the next one.
So they're holding those cards back because they're trying. And I know this is going to sound weird, but they're trying to hold their Arab neighbors in some sort of high regard because they could have attacked a lot of strategic points. Water desalination plants. You know what I'm saying? I can go down this list of life-supporting infrastructure that is necessary in that area of the world that we don't need here, say in the United States. They have purposely not targeted. Now, Trump, in the early days of this, they hit one of those type of plants and it almost all hell broke loose, right? But there became an unspoken rule. Okay, we're not going to hit life-supporting infrastructure. That is by design, because I'm telling you now, they know where everything is located and they have it targeted. The concern is if Trump and the administration show a lack of target discipline, just like they did with the Manab school, and they almost hit the nuclear plant this week. If they hit an electrical plant, a desalination plant, this, that, and the other, Iran will fight back and they will hit those life-supporting infrastructure places, which take years to create, by the way. Years. Now, I don't think that's something that they strategically want to do because, it's kind of all connected the way those systems work, the replacement parts to build, blah, blah, blah. But as far as oil, as far as straight up oil, the thing that President Trump cares about, they will target those places. They will target those. And I do believe that the entire oil economy will go to hell in a handbasket. OPEC will be brought to its knees because of something that an OPEC beneficiary, the United States, we cause. People need to understand, we get oil at a lower rate than the rest of the world. That's part of why we have all the bases that we have in that region, right? But if war crimes are committed, meaning we target something that is deemed civilian supporting and has no military value, like a school, then all bets are off. And we have not operated in enough good faith in this situation for us to get the benefit of a doubt. So if you're Jordan or Qatar or UAE, right, how do you look at this situation? You keep seeing the ordnance fly into your country. Some of it you knock down, but some of you don't. You see the United States bail on your country. They just closed the consulate in Dubai yesterday. Closed it because they're like, we can't protect you. We're not going to do any official business here. We're getting the hell out of Dodge. So now when the shit has hit the fan because of what you've done, you're pulling your people out because it's that dangerous. The Emiratis can't go anywhere. The Qataris can't go anywhere. The Jordanians can't go anywhere. So this whole thing is built on a house of matchsticks, not cards, matchsticks. And you have a guy that loves playing with fire. That's calling the shots. That's the best way I can describe it right now.
Everyone, if you're watching, hit that heart button on Substack, get some more numbers in here to see this show. Your questions are really incredible in your comments. I can hardly keep my eyes off them, but I want to say, back to this invasion thing and piggybacking off this is a house made of matchsticks and he's a dude who loves playing with fire. I think that there's so much there to unpack, but ultimately I don't think this is why you can't have somebody like Trump in office. who is a clinical sociopath, a narcissist. He has no concept of the world beyond his own context, right? Iran won't hurt him.
No.
Right? He will not serve. He's too old, or else he has bone spurs, right? None of this touches him personally, so he cannot understand any of the pain that it will cause anyone else. And you look at his reaction to Lindsey Graham's death. This was one of his strongest and most fervent allies. And he was like, man, really doomed the SAVE Act, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
Who the fuck is this guy? He is the worst. And so, look, I think that it's not just that he loves playing with fire. He doesn't know he's playing with fire, and maybe he doesn't care.
Well, I think you're right about he doesn't care, but he's never been burned. There's always been someone to jump on the fire for him. First, it was his dad. Then it was Roy Cohn. Then it was Michael. What's his face? I mean, there's always been people that he can throw on the fire if need be to absorb it. But for the first time in his life, his actions have consequences way beyond his sphere, and the world is holding him accountable. It's almost like he's gone through his entire life never having to be accountable, and then all of a sudden he's in this position where the whole world at one time is going to make up for a lifetime of unaccountability.
Yes.
And this is it, and it's going to hit him in a way. It's God, the delicious irony of this is it's going to hit him in a way where he'll feel it because it's about money, the economy. The one thing, if this was happening in Africa, where you're not strategically economically tied, or South America and portions there where you're not economically tied, he'd be like, whatever, we're done here. He just leave. But because it affects him, not only with the real estate deals that his family has been able to negotiate, sweetheart deals with all those countries, but all of his boys, the people who he wants to respect him, the big oil bearing companies, the big technological companies, they're all tied to this. And that's why this is annoying him. So much so that in his demented, and I mean this like dang near clinically, it seems like, he has to change the subject, which is why he's doing the whole thing on Thursday about voting and all this other complete chaff.
Yeah.
Because he has no solution. Vance is nowhere to be seen. Rubio is nowhere to be seen. Hegseth is nowhere to be seen. Ships are moving closer into position. He goes back to Congress for a War Resolutions Powers Act. He skips the Monday weekly. Everything is great. We're negotiating to bring the markets down. All of these are telling me that they are bracing themselves to escalate this thing to a full-on, never-ending war. People are going to die in uniform for this. That's what I see.
So let me I'm not going to push on that, but I want to just offer this alternative that say we don't commit troops, right? Say that everything just continues in a straight line or we'll call it a zigzag line. The world is currently unstable, right? There's no stability. And so whether you are committing troops and sending them potentially to their deaths, committing treasure, committing all of this stuff, those embassies are still closing. The markets are still trying to guess what's going to happen next. None of that leads to a strong economy. None of it leads to consumer confidence. None of it leads to any sort of stability in our daily lives, right? And like you and me, Bobby, we're kind of fine over here. The price is going to fluctuate. But as you said, those folks in Jordan, they're in Jordan. That's where they are, right? They're not leaving. The region is patently unstable. And I want to posit one other thing. Turn just a little bit to China, because currently, as of this year, the cost of renewable energy has sunk below the cost of fossil fuel energy. or energy derived from fossil. First time in history. Do you know who's building batteries? Do you know who's putting solar power online at a historic rate? Something like the equivalent of like 17 coal-powered power plants per day in solar capacity in China. We are fighting this war over oil right now. Iran has they have us over a barrel because of oil. We just opened millions and millions of federal land to make oil, to drill, so that we can become further entrenched in wars like this.
Yeah. So welcome to the Chinese century. There are parallels to the American century 100 years ago in America's ascendance to China's. About the same time. It's 2026 right now. Go back 100 years ago, 1926. World War I has been completed. The victors of World War I implement all the stuff, Treaty of Versailles, puts all these European countries in an economic depression because they selected to fight a war they should not have fought, right? The United States, squeaky clean, comes in at the end and is like, oh, we're here too, we're victors. And they are able to harness the rest of the world's need, and their economy booms because they are the ones that are looking towards the future. That's what China is doing right now. The dominant forces of the past, the United States and the Soviet Union, now Russia, are fighting self-selected wars that are draining them of precious resources, manpower, prestige, social standing. China laying back in the cut, doubling down on renewable energy. This used to be the most polluting country in the world, but in 25 years, completely turned it around, creating electric cars that are dirt cheap that you can get for $10,000 that are not allowed to come to the United States because
like 500 miles on a charge.
Exactly.
Right?
They will single-handedly wreck the automotive industry in the United States. They're changing how they do their military strategy. Yeah, they took bits and pieces from the 20th century. They stole from us, but they're implementing it differently. They are looking towards the future, but if you know anything about their culture, they don't look at things in 5-10 years. They look at them in hundreds and thousands of years because they're that old. They have a much better strategic mind than who we currently have in office now. So we are fighting the 20th century's wars in the 21st century, and we are not getting anywhere. Same with Russia and Ukraine. Ukraine is kicking their ass. They're bringing troops from Korea. They brought troops from Africa because they can't win because they're still fighting the wars of yesteryear.
Yes.
And China is just taking all of this information, laying in the cut, controlling precious minerals, building renewable energy supplies, and they'll just wait for our economy to crash out because this war is bankrupting us. Trump wants $350 billion more all of a sudden because you can't afford the war that you started. Ukraine is sitting there doing the same to Russia, where they're asking Iran to use their drones in Russia and asking China for loans too. We're watching this happen in such a manner, but it's just happening so fast that we can't even look at it from a historical perspective. But that's what's happening. We are what Europe was in the early 1900s, and China is us at the same time, only 100 years later. It's fascinating to me.
It's wildly fascinating. I think that the setback that we're facing right now, just in terms of technological progress, in terms of intellectual progress, in terms of science, in terms of all of these things, this is a real setback. We're going to have a lot of catching up to do because right now we're spinning our wheels over this technology. And the thing is, China isn't installing solar powers because they're a bunch of libs. They're not like they're not like a bunch of like, she doesn't wear Birkenstocks, he doesn't have dreadlocks or something. He's not some crunchy granola. They do it because they want unlimited free power. And when you have that, the first country to get that wins all of it. The side effect is that it creates a cleaner, quieter country. That's great.
But they have realized that energy independence for their population is the key to their global dominance. And make no mistake, global dominance. When I was a peacekeeper in Liberia after their civil war in 2007, China was all over that country, building infrastructure for free, just contributing. Soft power like nobody's business. I saw China, and I saw this other organization that Trump and Musk killed called USAID. Those were the two most prominent organizations in that country, competing for the hearts and minds of a country that has the largest natural rubber plantation on earth in Liberia. See, these are the type of things that we were able to do with soft power, but between Trump, Musk, and Hegseth, that's all been wiped out. And so now you have to threaten countries in order to hopefully see if they'll work with you. They may or may not, who knows? But China knows. They have established a brand new Silk Road that has now circumnavigated the world. And it's been by design over the last 30 years. It's been slow. It's been methodical. They give no interest loans to developing countries as long as they get access to their bases or access to ports. And we're sitting there fighting a war so we can find another place to drill a hole to go get more fossil fuels. It's insanity. It's literally watching the world pass you by.
It is. It absolutely is. So, we just back to the Ukraine situation. I want to start to kind of piece these things together because it's I need your brain on it to make it make sense for me. But, we had Ken Harbaugh on, who you talk to all the time, on with Stuart Stevens tonight on Strategy Session. And a soft plug, if you haven't seen it, you should go back and watch it when we post it. But Ken is unique because he was covering Ukraine and Ukraine war in ways that almost nobody was covering. He was really in the front lines, and I've seen footage where they're shooting, and I've watched this footage with him, and he's like, "See this tree? That was my favorite tree. It was the tree he could hide behind, right? As the shots are coming in." And he said, "Look, the Russians are losing, 30 to 40,000 a month." Men a month.
It's meat grinder.
They are measuring their life expectancy from the front lines in minutes. And so it's looking like Ukraine, it's not, I don't think it's in focus right now. Maybe you have different intel for me. Something I don't, but it looks like there's a sort of light. It's a fuzzy light at the end of this tunnel where Ukraine is starting to make out the figures of an end game here.
They are. And the hardest thing for Zelensky that he's going to have to do is to give Russia the exit ramp to do it because of how much and how hard they had to fight to keep them out. But if he wants a peace, especially with Putin's personality type, he's going to have to show some way to make it look like it's not a complete and total failure. Because here's the thing about dictatorships. The second weakness is shown, that dictator is now vulnerable. And you chose to invade Ukraine. You're getting your butts handed to you. You don't know how to process it. And you just keep throwing more people at the problem. There is unrest in Russia. And this is what's blowing my mind too. The traditional regular mainstream media streams are not covering this nearly enough. You better believe Fox News ain't talking about it. CNN every now and then, MS Now a little bit. But no, if this was any other country that this was happening, where it was the David and Goliath thing, it'd get much more coverage. But because Trump supports Putin, let's be very clear on this. Ideologically supports Putin. Congress has made him support Ukraine. This is not an administrative decision. It's not getting the coverage. But Ukraine, and I said this last week, I'll say it again, Ukraine is showing Iran how to handle business with the United States. This is a game of attrition. That's all war is. It's not about firepower. It's about how much can you absorb and continue to drive towards your mission goals. That's what it is. If you look at every major conflict the United States has actually won decisively, it was World War II. You absorbed those hits first in Pearl Harbor. You absorbed having to go into Germany knowing, or going into Europe knowing the Germans have taken over the entire continent. And then how much more can you absorb and then start to push back? Iran is absorbing everything we've got so far. Notice that no one is talking about the levels of ammunition the United States has, and no one has speculated about Russia's ammunition either. This is a problem because Russia has had to ask for ammunition from Iran, China, and North Korea. And they used to be the suppliers of those countries, right? And there it is, Floofy. We have no mission goals. Thursday, President Trump is going to talk about the 2020 election, major announcements, whatever. He's going to sit there and say that the two senators from my state, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, are illegitimate from 2020 or something like that. That's the rumor. It just so happens to be Georgia's first black senator and Georgia's first Jewish senator. But yeah, let's go after them because interesting. Why wouldn't we? Right. But all at the same time, we're just going to sit there and say that the 2016 election was good, the 2024 election was good. By the way, you were president of the United States when the 2020 election happened. So it's on your watch if it was illegitimate. That's neither here nor there. But we're going to talk about that. We're not going to hear a speech on what's next in the Middle East. No, which is what you're supposed to do after going to Congress and asking for a war powers resolution. Yes. I'm old enough to remember how things used to work. Petridge Farm remembers that you go to Congress and then you address the United States of America as what you're going to do with their sons and daughters. But we're not doing that. So there's a few things here. Let me start with the sort of global impact, and then I want to kind of bridge over to the domestic impact of these wars. But thinking out in the next 5 years, right? Trump will be gone. Putin is not that long for this world, if we're all being honest. Ukraine may come out of this stronger. It may be an emerging market in Eastern Europe. And Russia will be falling pretty dramatically. Also, you're going to have hundreds of thousands of really damaged men coming back from the front lines to Russia, to a potentially failed state. That is a vacuum where crime and dark shit happens, right? Russia could be an incredible cesspool. We have Iran emerging as a power in the Middle East. We have a shakeup entirely of that region. What else we got? Trump will be gone. I think I said that. Go ahead. I was going to say, Sam,
let me ask you, what's happening?
What you're describing, Sam, is the end of the superpower state of the liberal international order. Okay. Let me break this. So liberal, when you hear that term LIO, a liberal international order, this is not conservative liberals like we know in politics today. This is what the world set up after World War II to basically hopefully never have a World War III. Right? The money systems, the political systems, who was involved in what. And basically what came out of it was two superpowers, the United States and the Soviet Union. Soviet Union eventually falls apart because the power of alliances, specifically NATO and the European Union, was more powerful than the Warsaw Pact. Full stop. All the proxy wars, all that. But they were led by the United States and the Soviet Union. The United States, I think, when this is all over, will no longer be viewed as a superpower. I believe the degradation will be that ridiculous. Because when I talk about superpower, I mentioned this before, military capability to strike anywhere in the world, that's the number one thing. But there are also other elements, economic might, to be able to manipulate the system, all of that, to have diplomatic weight when you go to a country and say, hey, we're here to negotiate and people respect it. All of those intangibles that come with being a superpower are being burned away in real time as we sit here, right? Russia is done the same thing, because the one country you chose to try to invade is the one country that was really the backbone of that Russian spirit that everybody got to know. The Ukrainians have been hardcore for centuries, if you don't know this, right? So we both picked two fights that are leading to the downfall of the empires. That's what it is. When I say empires, not in the classic colonization sense and all this, but as far as having worldwide influence, no. And you're going to have now a bunch of smaller hegemonies around the world. You're going to have the United States, you're going to have China, you're going to have Russia. You're now going to have Iran. You're going to see the continued rise of India. You're going to see the continued rise of Brazil and South America. You know, Nigeria, Angola, these places, all these little blobs of influence. But as far as the global reach, not going to happen. One of the reasons it's not going to happen with the United States is because we're purposely taking ourselves out of things that would keep us internationally viable. You mentioned renewable energy. We're drilling baby drill. Who else in the world is still doing that? Yep, floofy, BRICS. For those who don't know what BRICS are, BRICS is basically Russia's answer to the European Union. Brazil, Russia, India, China, I want to say South Africa. I mean, it's more than just the BRICS countries now. It's like 7+ whatever. But all of these different groups coming together are forming these many alliances and many influence circles. The danger with that is that's exactly how World War I started.
Yeah.
So without dominant superpowers to sit there and tell this half you stay in line and this half you stay in line, everybody's all in their own interest. You have how many countries that have a nuclear weapon now? You know, double digits. You have, you know, Iran that can completely shut down the international marketplace based on the access to resources that it has now and how they can control it. This is what happens when leadership falls on its ass and when the superpower dies. We've never seen it in human history because we've never been this interconnected before. And to have this happen at the same time. The closest thing we got to that is the British Empire falling apart in the 20th century. But even then, we were not as connected as we are now, where one event happens in Iran, and then within seconds, the markets plummet because they know it happened. This is different, and no one's really talking about that.
No, I think the World War I model is really interesting in that there was a Byzantine system of pacts and treaties and all of this, but nobody left to run it, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
So how do you know who, where, and Trump has taken all of every system of pacts and treaties and taken screws out, right?
Yep.
Removed a leg here, taken a bolt out here. It's very rickety, and that's when things collapse in that way. I think it's safe to say there will be, you know, the world is already different.
Oh yeah.
Dramatically permanently. Yeah, we will never go back to the way it was even in 2024, which is a remarkable thing to say, but I think we can defend it. So I want to just with the last 10 minutes or 5 minutes or however long. By the way, guys, you all sticking in here. I love it. I'm reading all your comments and questions. So smart. A lot of people are like, this, I love this show. This audience is even better than the show, I think. But
very much so. Let's
think about it domestically, Bobby, because we can talk about rising prices. We can talk about, tumultuous economy. We can talk about our gap, how much it costs to fill the tank and all of this. But the real foundation of Americanism is the sense of being an American, right? The like when you see a boot step off a lunar lander, it's an American boot, right? You see that flag up there. You see, you think about the men and women who sacrificed in the European theater and the Pacific theater. You're an American. You think about polio vaccine. You think about all of these things that we've done. That is a real source of identity for so many of us, and I think it's a thing that's missing this year in our 250th. So could you talk about just that bigger sort of 30,000 foot impact of all of these shenanigans on our culture and our national identity?
I think the best way I can put it, Sam, is in an attempt to narrow what being American is by this current administration, you've overall weakened the meaning of America. What I mean by that is when you try to only tell certain portions of the history of the country, when you try to only uplift certain individuals in the country, when you try to put a gold wrapper around things that America may not be the most proud of, but it happened, you cheapen what it means to be American, because the ultimate American story, the commonality is the people of this country at some point, no matter what that background is, had to overcome something to become part of this thing, right? Whether if you're talking about the African, the descendants of slaves, whether you're talking about the first Irish that came here, whether you're talking about the Chinese that were forced here. I mean, we can go all day. If you're talking about the natives that were here and fought tooth and nail just to survive here, you're talking about a story of ultimate struggle and triumph, right? And when you sit there and you just try to limit it to the guys that were at Independence Hall in 1775 and all this, when you do that, when you really do that, what happens is you sit there and you cheapen the story of America, right? America is a combination of all sorts of cultural influence, but most importantly, we have been able to figure out a way to continue to get better, slowly but surely. And mind you, sometimes we go backwards before we go forwards, but there's this continuity, right? The boldness of it. What really bothers me about what's happening here more so than anything else is this snapshot that we're dealing with right now of American history cheapens the movie of what America is. Because damn it is the most unbelievable human drama I think the world's ever seen, this thing. And at the end of the day, the actors in it, and when I say actors, I mean me and you and everybody in the chat and everybody watching, when the actors feel like their roles don't matter, that's when the story fades.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening in real time. You got someone in rural Pennsylvania that is making a decision between getting a gallon of milk for their kid or putting gas in their car. You have people who have served, veterans who can't get a VA appointment anymore, that gave the prime years of their lives, and they can't even see a psychologist, right? All because the people who have the most right now, who've gotten the most through whatever means, are not satisfied with what they have. They need to have more. And you have someone in office for the first time in American history, in my humble opinion, that sees the office as a tool for his self-aggrandizement,
Yes,
instead of the tool to help all Americans. And that's what's mind-blowing to me about this.
I think it's so telling that in our 250th year we minted our first trillionaire.
Yes.
Kind of
Yes.
says everything.
Yes. Who, by the way, ironically, may be an illegal immigrant based on what he has admitted in the past. You can't make this up. I'm just like,
Bobby, he's a refugee, man. He's from South Africa. He's the one that we want, right?
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But that's the reality, right? That's the reality. But here's the thing. And trust me, I've been down in the dumps about it. I watched the 4th of July and I was mad because I was like, this is a clown show. But here's the hope that I have. For the first time, I see a lot of people pissed off. They don't like status quo. You know, a lot of these people were absorbing this because they thought some grand vision, something was going to be better for them. Now, granted, when you have people having to dodge ICE agents getting shot in Maine or being shot in Houston or being shot in Minnesota, it starts to wake you up. I get it. And I know there are people like, well, they didn't care until it started happening to them. You're absolutely right. But guess what? It's happening to them. Yep. So let's just take the win. They care now. Get them on board, because America is all about citizen action. That's the difference between this country from day one, since 1770 in the Boston Massacre, to now. It's been citizens saying, okay, we're going to change this. The midterm elections are so vital this year because you have a crop of people who have never run for public office before going to trying to go to Congress. Not career politicians. I've been interviewing them. These are cats that are former military, former federal workers who are like, this is bullshit. I'm going to do something about it. And if you are not looking up who these people are, shame on you. Because damn it, the same people that were in office when I was in high school or in Congress are the same people who are still there now. They're dying off. We've had more people die in this Congress, apparently, this session of Congress, more than I think any other time except 2 in the 250-year history of this country. Like, we've had, 6 members of Congress die here in the last year or something like that, a year and a half.
Yep.
It's insane. Because they're 70, 80, 90 years old sitting in. Chuck Grassley is 91 years old. How is he still chairing the committee in the Senate?
Look, and here's the thing. We replace those motherfuckers with 84-year-olds. You know, like this is the problem. We are on the brink of a wild change in this world and in this nation, because we're running out of 80-year-olds to replace the 85-year-olds with.
Yes.
Yes. And it's going to come powerfully. And, you know, all of the polling about how much people hate the Democratic Party is kind of bullshit, because you can hate the Democratic Party, but love your candidate.
Yes.
And it's right. So everyone out there, you do what Bobby says. Go look up the candidates, see who's actually running. And then first of all, I don't know that we need to tell this audience exactly to look up your candidates. This audience is read in on all things, but send that stuff to the people who need to see it.
Yep.
People need to hear this, right? You don't need to be smug, but people need information.
I agree. And I'm going to be honest with you, like down here in my little local town, south of Atlanta here, I went into the Democratic headquarters and I went off this week. There are candidates running for office that are trying their best. And it's so ridiculous because the Democratic Party is enamored with national level offices, and they do jack and shit for local and state offices.
Yes.
And so I'm watching these people struggle, and I just go off. I'm like, you guys call me when y'all are serious about doing change at all levels, because this is ridiculous. The fact is, you are in a situation because last I checked, the states control elections, which is why Trump is mad and why he's going to talk Thursday. But if you can't get any traction locally and at the state level, then why the hell do you think anything's going to happen for you nationally? You got it backwards, people. And the Democrats are so enamored with having the national spotlight and being on Sunday morning talk shows. Meanwhile, you're getting your asses kicked in your state houses. You're getting your butts handed to you at local city government. And then you want to know why. Oh my gosh, my local police is working with ICE. Yes, because you've been asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
This is we're failing an open book test as far as the resistance to what's happening here. But at the same time, even those that were once, in the MAGA sphere who are falling out, they're telling you too, you need to be more robust. You need to be more pronounced. And how much longer are people going to sit there and say, well, someone going to figure it out when it's you who needs to help figure it out? I don't know.
Yeah. And, to be fair, Patrick makes a good point, and he's right. We've, Patrick in the chat says, we're running candidates everywhere and putting more money into state and party infrastructure. And that's totally true. At Lincoln Square, we've been talking to a lot of grassroots organizers, a lot of strategists, a lot of people, what's his name? Our great Michigan friend who decided he was just going to start a website and funnel money to parties, and he doesn't take a single dime of it, but he's raised like 15 million bucks, right?
This,
for
but
local
this is
candidates.
no,
This is
and I'm not.
remarkable.
This. Let me make sure I'm very clear what I'm saying. Y'all are absolutely right. However, the national level party, the difference between the GOP and the Democrats is the GOP will have a national level person that's sitting in Congress fly into a goddamn town hall meeting for a local city government person who's running and send money. Because back in the 80s, when William F. Buckley put this conservative movement together, they realized that the power is local and it transcends up. That is why they dominated AM radio for the longest time when no one was listening to it. All of these things is what I'm trying to say needs to be, as great as the grassroots is, you better have and you need to have national firepower behind it too. You need to have both. So Patrick, you're absolutely right. But my frustration is not with the individual grassroots people, it's with the national people not recognizing the grassroots movement is how to fix this. They have it strategically backwards.
Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah, you're right. We're improving. We're getting better, and I do think that this midterm, depending on how we respond to Trump shenanigans, is going to be something else. I did see 23 Iranian vessels operating inside the strait are fraudulently flagged, recently turned their transponders off, or otherwise manipulating their activities to become what the industry calls dark vessels. So they're already testing the blockade.
Yes. And so the blockade that the United States has just put back up, now we're in the cat and mouse game. Unfortunately, what you're going to find is when you do this, they're not going to give anybody benefit of the doubt. This could escalate the conflict because, if I'm being honest, if you don't know, if it's unknown, that means you're a possible foe. As opposed to if you're unknown, you're a possible friend. Both sides are going to start shooting vessels. Just hear me out. The United States and Iran are going to start shooting vessels because the unknown is an enemy in these state of affairs. That's what happens when you have no negotiation.
Yep.
Yes. Very true.
Amazing.
Very true. Now,
there's hope. Guys, there's hope.
There's hope. But again, I need the Democratic Party to go down there and put real money and fundraising behind them. Because here's the thing that we're seeing in Georgia, depending on where you are, they're like, well, that race is not winnable. We'll put our resources elsewhere. No, flood everywhere. Go after every seat. That's what they did. You think they just turned houses overnight? No, it took decades of consistent pressure. It's almost like they did not read the playbook that they used. There is no such thing as an uncontested race. Contest everything.
Yep.
Contest everything. Every inch you contest it, and then let's see where the chips fall where they may. And you are consistent about it. This whole we're not going to go after this or go after that because it's not winnable. Well, how do you know?
That's right.
You know, these posters, these Ivy League kids and all this. I'm so sick and tired of this. It makes no sense.
Well, look, we probably should wrap up. We've come up to an hour. Everyone, if you aren't subscribed to Navshad, Bobby's Substack, it is my first go-to every morning. He does a morning daily brief. It's like 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and he tells you all you need to know about the war. And if you're wondering which war, every war that we're currently in, it is such a clean and precise source of information that you just can't get anywhere else. Also subscribe to Lincoln Square. Obviously, you can subscribe for free. You can also go pay if you want. I will also say we have 6 Questions with Stephen Beschloss coming up tomorrow. We might do a sneak peek at that tomorrow at 9 a.m. to coincide with the Blanche hearings because his guest this week is Glenn Kirshner, who has a lot to say about Blanche. So we might run that tomorrow. Keep an eye on that, everyone. Thank you, Bobby. Last words?
No, man. Keep the faith. Get active if you can, but most importantly, stay informed. Doesn't take much to stay informed. It may take something to get active, but at minimum, stay informed. So when you hear the stuff that's going to happen, like on Thursday, you know what the truth is, and you're able to share it with people that you care about.
Damn straight. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Bobby.
Thank you, everyone.
See you next week.